the anxiety caused by debt, it's a greedy beast of our contentment. And when you think of, like Paul said, he was content everywhere, whether well-fed or hungry. And he's in a prison, he's not being well-fed. He doesn't have a comfortable bed. So where is our contentment?
This is Miriam Neff. She is my mom. She's the founder and president of Widow Connection, and her background is in counseling. She has many years of counseling experience and has, I believe, about 15 years experience now being the head of a widow's ministry.
And this is my daughter, Valerie Neff Hogan. And besides being creative and thoughtful and all of that, she has a law degree and a CFP degree, and is doing something else with Columbia Business School. But I think one of the things I'm so proud of and happy about is she has a great heart for generosity, and that's the key to the book we've written that we want to talk with you about today. Well, one of the things that we want to emphasize, and we say this right in the first chapters, is it's all God's on loan to us. It's not ours. We don't give him a certain percent. It's 100% his. So it's about stewardship, and where do we go for truth for that? The scripture. So everything is foundation. For instance, one of the first things we say is first you earn and then you spend. It's a Proverbs verse.
Well, that is so telling too, because I think we feel like the money's our own. And, you know, as the verse says, no one can serve two masters, and that is example given is mammon, which means money, and God. No one can serve money and God. And so we know that number one, or one of the number one gods that pulls us away from God that we can't serve is without even realizing it, we're serving money. So that's really a key thing you've said there about we've got to remember it is all God's. Give us a little bit of your story, and then lead us up, you know, through your lives and why you've written this book and what you find is important about it.
Sure. Well, we're coming at the topic from a biblical worldview. So talking about money in light of that and managing it and stewarding it wisely. So my mom has a widow's ministry, and I did finance and law. So the way we got started on this topic, it was almost kind of over the backyard fence questions, we'll say. Through the widow's ministry, right on the heels of working with women that were having grief, were these questions about, well, what about the money issues? Because right on the heels of that grief were money problems. Either, oh, I didn't know we had this much debt, or, boy, I've never done the finances before. The husband had already done that in many, many cases. So we wrote this book and have a radio feature, and it was all coming out of those conversations. We just saw the same topics again and again of either, wow, I didn't know we had that, or suddenly managing a whole lot, suddenly half owner of a manufacturing company. So we were seeing particularly women being thrown into situations after a major life change, and some of the same themes coming over and over. How to steward it well, getting that confidence, and also avoiding fraud.
And I would just add that one of the things that's documented in research is that women lack financial confidence. And it isn't that we're not capable of learning everything we need to do, and we actually can and we will. We already oversee over half the wealth in the United States, women do. And that's going to grow to 3/4 very shortly. We are finding ourselves overseeing a lot of money. This means God is entrusting us with this great responsibility. So we can't say, oh, I didn't know, or oh, I was busy. This is ours to learn about. And I mentioned before that first we earn and then we spend, and our culture says don't do it that way. And the verse says, till your field and then build your house or pitch your tent. Well, that means get your job and then buy a house that the mortgage fits in your job, and don't accumulate debt. And Valerie is a research person with numbers and all that, and debt in for men and women is just, it isn't God honoring, and we call it a greedy beast of our money.
That's true. And so we've seen, again, back to this theme of maybe one of the statistics that Mom was referring to is that 80% of the time she will be carrying that baton to the end. It will be that he will go to heaven first and that she will go next. And so if we look at it as far as resources and how that's to be stewarded, we know that women will be managing finances, and it's not an option of, oh, I don't want to handle the finances. It's that we will, or will it handle us, so to speak, if we don't handle that. So the Bible is an incredible source of wisdom for handling finances, managing money, being an excellent steward. God gave us what we need to know, and there's a lot of great expertise from the world out there as well, but we can always balance that in light of Scripture. We don't live on the same system that the world necessarily lives on. The one who dies with the most toys wins. We have a different worldview than that of what did the Lord give us to steward, and what would He like us to do with His stuff. And so we need to assess what we're working with and how to work best with that. So we talk about assessing what we have, what do we owe and what do we own. And then let's get a spending plan, or that bad word budget, and knowing how to invest. And then how do we be generous? I mean, what's the why? Are we just packing it on to accumulate, make a few bigger barns? Or would we really like to serve the Lord with out of that surplus that we would build then? And that's really our goal, to kind of walk women through that process and have them really be confident to go out into the world and do all the things that God has made them equipped to do.
Well, I would think that people don't even realize that the Bible says not to go in debt. I think that would be a real surprise.
Well, we have a few chapters on that. We get very specific. There are only a few cases where you can, and the criteria for that. And for the people watching, and I know you address parents a lot, we set the example. So if parents are accumulating debt and swiping the credit card, and oh, my kid needs a smartphone, and it's an example. That might not be true, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Then we are teaching them, even without saying a word. We address that. But the other thing about family and generations, and I know you're all about that, we're a steward not just of what we have, but when we leave, do we pass on what we have in a wise way? And we have chapters on Roth IRAs and trusts and wills and all. And we break it down. It's really simple language. It's not all legal language, although we footnote to resources like that. But we want to say, okay, if God has entrusted me this, and then I leave this planet, have I put it in a good tool to go wisely, and have I talked to my family about where it's going and that kind of things? So we get real practical because that's who we are. And by the way, her children have heard this stuff, and my grandchildren,
That's right.
they've heard the message loud and clear.
Yeah, my young boys are like, Mom, say that budget word one more time.
No.
They're over it, but they are living it and taking it in. But boy, have they ever heard it quite a bit.
Passing on the good,
Yes.
good information.
Yes, yes.
Whether they necessarily think it is or not, right? They are absorbing.
That's right.
Oh, they
Definitely.
do.
For sure. And so specifically with debt, why are some of the things that God doesn't want us to be in debt? I mean, I've heard it compared to almost like a slavery. You're owned by that debt, and then you have to pay this interest, which you wouldn't have to pay if you weren't in debt. But help me, why is it not good to have debt?
Yeah, well, the Bible talks about the borrower's slave to the lender. And so if you think about it, whatever would come in, if you're in debt, that's already spoken for. So what happens when the Lord brings someone across your path that needs help? It's already spoken for. In other words, you're going to work for that master. And really, we want to go to work for the Lord, our master, right? So We can't really step into all the things I think God has for us if we're deeply in debt and just can't get out of it. I don't think it's excellent stewardship to be paying the interest rates that we would need to pay with that. And then also just at the root of it, are we consuming more than we were meant to consume? If we're going underwater to do that, and we have compassion for folks that have a one-time incident and they don't have a choice. So we're really not speaking to that, but we're talking about a lifestyle of consumption that is way outdoing what we're bringing in. And I would just really evaluate folks to think about, is that really what the Lord has for them? What about a lifestyle, and what about contentment? We're to be in the world but not of it. So are we really to be looking around to the world to say, I should have this, I should own that, I should look like this, I should accumulate that? Or do we want to care about the things that God cares about? And so I think those are just some of the reasons why we say debt can be a greedy beast, and it can get a hold of things that were really meant to be God's. And I think He meant for us to share with others.
And if I might add, what Valerie's talking about, we have anxiety about that. And there's research that says people are less productive at work, and one reason is they are anxious about their finances, and it makes them less productive. Well, part of why they're anxious is they know the credit card bill is coming, and maybe they're prepared to pay that minimum amount, which the credit card company loves that because the interest they're going to be charging you goes money in their pocket, not in generosity, not in wise spending. So the anxiety caused by debt, it's a greedy beast of our contentment. And when you think of, like Paul said, he was content everywhere, whether well-fed or hungry. And he's in a prison. He's not being well-fed. He doesn't have a comfortable bed. So where is our contentment? And one of the things that Valerie writes about, we share the writing in the book, by the way. She says, if you think you want that and you're going to order it online, put it in the cart and don't touch it for a month, and then see how important it is a month later. Or go to the grocery store with only cash. How embarrassed are you going to be if what you have in your cart is beyond what's in your wallet? So we do some really practical things that may sound elementary, but sometimes we need to hear that. Just don't buy it now. If it's vital, then it's going to be something that you can wait for. You're not starving today, you're not cold today. Wait until you have cash to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think just one more thing about debt is it keeping us in a job that may not be where the Lord would take us? If we had some margin, if we had a little bit of buffer there, if we're no longer in the job that the Lord called us to, and He may be calling us somewhere else, do we have the freedom to go there? And that takes margin. That gives us options. Even in retirement, are we needing to work longer because of our consumption, or could we be volunteering or serving in those years? So it's just really something that when we were writing this and addressing the debt topic, we really just want people to be free to walk into all that the Lord would have for them.
I want to mention the name of the book again, Wise Women Managing Money. In that book, do you address what to do then if you've got yourself, which a lot of people have themselves in that trap of debt. I don't want to say it that way, because no, if you do have that trap, God is waiting to get you out. There's a way. These ladies probably have it in their book. So there's hope, and God is a miracle working God. But then also, I think one of the debt that people don't even realize, which is the credit card companies don't want you to realize, is that debt is also associated when you are not paying off everything on your credit card. That is also debt, because you're rolling it over to the next month and the next month. That is a form of debt and will get you in trouble. And so how do you get out of that?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I would say generally there might be two buckets there to look at.
Okay.
There may be the kind of debt that has accumulated that you just need assistance. So let's set that aside for just one moment, that you may not be able to get out of on your own. And then there's the kind of debt where, hey, we could do this. It's not going to be fun or easy, but it's going to be doable. And just like we build muscle to work out, that'll build that muscle of paying that off, right? So we don't walk up to a 1,000-pound barbell and just lift it. we build that muscle little by little. So that process of, if it's something that we can get out of on our own, we first have to take stock of, well, what do we owe and what do we own? And is what we have coming in enough to start to walk out of that? So that just takes, getting it down on paper, Excel spreadsheet, some app, wherever it would be, you need to get that in front of you, and then just get a plan to start walking out and stop adding to it. I think that would be another thing. Rolling it over to just another credit card, but leaving the one open could mean now you've maxed that out, but now you've got another one. So we want to work on the behavior that maxed that out to begin with. I call it just stop the bleeding. And then just start to walk out of that little by little. There is a point where folks may have gotten into so much debt that they just can't do it alone, and that's where you want a reputable credit consulting or counseling company out there. And there are the good ones and there are the not so great ones. So that's something to really research, but they can help folks that just are way in over their head.
And we mentioned some of those in the book where basically they kind of take your paycheck and give you a little allowance to live on, and they negotiate with your creditors to get those down and that kind of thing. And rather than go into a lot of time on it, we have the details in the book, and that is an option. Some people need to grab that. It just is kind of beyond what they can handle. But what Valerie said about shrink your spending plan, there are habits that we just have to break. Autopilot when you're overspending is crash ahead. I just made that up, Val.
I think it's pretty good.
Well, Miriam, you have said, and you've written a lot of books, that this is the most important book you've ever been part of. Why would that be?
Well, I have written a lot, and with my background in counseling on emotions and devotional books and helping teens and all kinds of things, we need to be so much more focused on honoring God with our finances. And our culture has gotten so far from that. And we know now that more help goes to people that need it through Christian not-for-profit churches. They're so much more efficient with a dollar than the government. So, and we pay taxes, we know we're supposed to do that, but it's important for us to realize that it is time for believers to step up and have their dollar go to God-honoring ways. So when we talk about generosity, we're talking about being able to look around and say, okay, who is doing ministry or serving orphans? And we both have I have adopted children as well as children born to me. Valerie has adopted children. There are many good places that you can help people. What does it take to help people? Sometimes it's money. So I think if we can grasp that this very important tool that God owns, but He's entrusted it to us, is something to do good, is to bring the gospel to more people, is to bring God's love to more children, to more orphans, to know that widows are cared for by God, to know that people in crisis around the world can experience love through what God has entrusted to us for a season. God deserves the glory, and I want that to go full out, full speed ahead. And Valerie has the same heart, so it's like we're on it. So that's why I think this is the most important book I've been a part of.
I love how you say that, and think about that as generosity. You can partner with God in these, your churches or your Christian ministries, and they are more effective at really doing the help and helping than the government or other places, like you say. And so you can really have a lot of return on your investment in a powerful way. You talk about different ways to invest our money, but you explain options. You don't give specific recommendations.
That's correct. Well, first of all, Matthew 25 is a chapter that talks about stewardships, stewards, and it talks about stewards that are given much and medium and a small amount. So we first have to say God gives us all something to steward, and we may wish we were the one that got 10, or we may be the one that got 1. But the lesson of Matthew 25 is that God intends it to be multiplied. And so we want people to be able to use their money to grow And when you grow it, you can do more. Now, I didn't become so knowledgeable or passionate about this until my husband, Val's dad, went to heaven. And then I was overseer of a little bit. And I went to the library and I learned, and let me tell you, investing is fun. It is just fun, fun, fun. And we talk about, and we have whole sections in the book on this, about the terminology and these different places money can go, because some women aren't familiar with the terminology. And you need to know what a small cap, mid cap, large cap is. It's a toddler, a teenager, and an adult. That's our terms. And it's very descriptive. But there's equities, there's bonds, there's stocks, and then there's shoe boxes. Now, let's say that you're a steward and you have the one talent and you're just a little bit hesitant, so you put it in a shoebox. Read Matthew 25 and see what this steward did with that, and that didn't go well. I'll just say that. It didn't go well.
And I think we need to talk about it because Christ talked about it, right? About half his parables were about money. He was talking about these things. And I think in some senses, the money is really not about the money. He knew it was going to grab our heartstrings and also enable us to be free or not, or which master are we serving. I mean, it has so many different implications spiritually for us. I think we had to talk about those things. With the investing, there's a lot of options, and a lot of people are very intimidated by the language. So we started to kind of go after and simplify some of the language that I think has people kind of put off, like, oh, that's not for me, I don't get it. I'm moving on to something else, or a little bit of embarrassment, like, oh, I should know that. And we address that right on. Folks aren't born with the innate knowledge of all that terminology. I don't open a hood of a car and automatically know everything that's under there. I only know it when I have to pay for it. Then I'm going to learn it really fast. But these are things that there are just terms in the industry, and we break some of those down and just encourage folks, you can do this. This is knowable. I think some folks just feel so overwhelmed. And so we address that, and little by little, and you really don't need to know everything, but you need to know the essentials, I think.
And if I could just piggyback on that, there are many people out there that would like to take what has been entrusted to us and take it from us, either fraudulently or by giving bad advice. And we have a chapter on how to pick a financial advisor. And for women, you need to make sure that they are listening to you, they know your risk tolerance, and they know your goals. And not only do they need to have listened to you and know those, they need to follow them. And we have sadly had experience with many who decide, oh, it's affinity fraud. This person played golf with my husband, or this person is in the church. Just because it's in the garage doesn't mean it's a car. So I'm being a little direct here, but we need to make sure we're listening to good advice. And when someone gives us advice, like if we have some money and someone says, oh, I know where you should put it, listen, and then you can politely say, I'll research that. And then they need to be able to accept the answer of, no, I'm not going to do that. And if they're a friend or relative and you fear losing their friendship, you don't have a friendship, you have a user. So we're talking about wise women managing money.
And this isn't just our opinion. We've seen stories just repeatedly. This is coming from heartbreaking story after heartbreaking story that we've addressed, and then some victorious stories. So we're speaking from those experiencing, just admonishing folks. Sometimes get a second opinion, be discerning, get godly advice, maybe from 2 or 3 counselors, as the Bible mentioned. The Bible, we just keep going back to it because it keeps on having such great wisdom for us here.
Well, and I love one of the things Valerie frequently says is hit the pause button. And if someone is saying you need to do this, or it's this opportunity for this mutual fund is this door is going to close tomorrow, let the door close. Let the door close. Hit the pause button and do research, because you're the steward. I'm going to answer to the Lord for what he has entrusted to me. I can't point to someone else and say, oh, but he said do this, or she said do that, or well, I ignored it because I was busy doing whatever else I'm doing. That's not an option for a steward of the Lord. That's our why. Valerie mentioned, we need to know our why. Why are we doing it? That motivates us to learn and be judicious and to plan through trusts and wills for things to go well, to where they would be used well. Because if let's say someone has a lot to entrust to the next generation, and they have someone that they could give to that is foolish with money, and I will say, well, just go to a place they could gamble it all away on a weekend or something like that. That's not good stewardship. That's our why factor coming in again. Why are we doing this? We're doing it to honor God. It puts a whole new light on us wanting to learn and be faithful to what God has given us, just this window of opportunity, that what He's entrusted to us.
So your book has 26 chapters. Can you give us an overview, an overall, of what you address?
Yeah, I can give you a flyover of, first of all, we're kind of in the assess and just get a hold of things. So that section is going to be all about figuring out what we own and what we owe. And so in other languages, that would be assets and liabilities, right, in that industry language. Then we're going to talk about budgeting and making a spending plan and getting our arms around that and how we do that wisely. Then we're going to talk kind of nuts and bolts about, well, what about homeowners insurance and how much housing, and what about car, and all those different types of things. Then we kind of move into investing and what's out there and a little bit of description about those things. And then we move to things like estate planning, wills and trusts, benevolence, giving, generosity. And at the end, we kind of wrap our arms around now what has God wired you to do? When you walk through this process, where are you going to go out into the world and bless? Once you kind of move through that and have that confidence and are making inroads, getting stable and maybe a little bit of surplus, then what does God have? So that's kind of the flyover of the process and what we've written about there.
And if I could add, there are women who might not want to read the chapter on cars because they're knowledgeable about that. They don't need to count the cost of insurance and all that. They might skip that. Or they might look at the chapter on emotional budget busters, because sometimes our emotions, heartstrings, someone's asking for money, we should be paying off our bill, but we want to give them that. Mm-hmm. They might, oh my word, my emotions are wrecking my budget plan. They might go there. So you can go to any chapter. They build on each other a little bit, but some are separate on a topic. Or you may say, well, all the stuff about the spending plan, I've got that down. But let me learn about investing in these different options and really get current on terms. So jump in wherever your need is. But I can tell you, near the end of the chapter, we have one chapter on 8 habits of wise women managing money. And if you want to take a picture of that list and put it on your iPhone or tape it on your mirror, if you've got those, you know your why, and God is going to be smiling.
Definitely want to recommend Wise Women Managing Money. Thank you all so much for being here. And I love the fact that you're a mother-daughter team. Very sweet.
We have a good time doing this.
We do. Thank you.